Good evening and welcome. Tonight on the show, we're taking a look at Pacific Island Food Revolution. This is a new and innovative program that focuses and promotes local healthy eating. And to discuss it, we have with us Mr. Wame Valentine, who is the Communications and Partnerships Manager at Pacific Island Food Revolution. Wame, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, something that promotes local healthy food is a very brief summary of what it is. I'm sure Pacific Island Food Revolution is much more than that. So if you could just start off with a bit of detail on what it is and how this program came about.
Certainly, Vinaka. Generally, most people know us as a television program, and that is indeed one of the products that we create. A very popular television show. It's a cooking competition where we have contestants here from Fiji, from Samoa, from the Kingdom of Tonga, and indeed our friends from Vanuatu who come together and they cook their own local food, hoping to win the title and try to impress the judges, which is the founder, Robert Oliver, and very prominent food experts in the Pacific, and also very top personalities or leaders in the region, like Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal from the Kingdom of Tonga, Princess Charlotte, a leading food expert in Samoa and in Vanuatu, as well as here in Fiji. But Pacific Island Food Revolution, or PIFA, as we like to call it, is more than just a television program. What we are is a behavior change communication program, and a program in the traditional sense of the word. We've been funded generously by the governments of Australia and New Zealand as a pilot project since 2018 for 3 years, which ended last month, October, or rather the month before, October of this year. The work of Pacific Island Food Revolution is fairly, we take a very different approach, a very innovative approach to putting the spotlight on food, on indigenous food, on local food. Why? Because of the high numbers of non-communicable diseases like obesity, diabetes that we have here in Fiji and the Pacific. Now, it's been an issue for the last couple of decades, and we needed a serious solution. We've undertaken some surveys and we've found that some of the reasons why people make poor food choices or unhealthy food choices is mainly because and it's different for certain parts, but generally they seem to have a very poor view of our own local food. For some reason, here in Fiji, for instance, if you present a bowl of, let's say, ro-ro, right, a lovely bowl of ro-ro, I'm sure we all love ro-ro, mixed with, coconut milk, have some kumalo on the side, people tend to think that that's something that you would have in a rural setting, in a village, not something you and I could eat in downtown Suva or in Lautoka or in Savusavu. What we're trying to do through media and through partnerships is to sort of shift perceptions or shift behavior towards essentially our culture, because food is, by extent, what we represent in the communities, our culture. We're trying to revitalize or elevate local cuisine to where it was before. And that is, what our ancestors, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our great-grandparents used to eat. Diabetes and other NCDs is fairly a new, recent phenomenon, right, particularly in the mid to late 80s. And, our friends and our colleagues in the NCD space, particularly in the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, would better know that. And it's, it has its reasoning due to modernization. These numbers are beginning to rise, due particularly to a lot of food that is highly processed and are foreign. So what we're trying to do at Pacific Island Food Revolution, and in association with our partners, is we're trying to create engaging and yet entertaining and educational media. We're calling it edutainment, mixing entertainment and education. And that's why we have this television program. The beauty of the television program is a lot of people love reality television. You look at programs such as Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's a poor example, but
I was thinking something along the lines of MasterChef.
There you go, MasterChef as well. That's a prime example, MasterChef. And in fact, funny they should say MasterChef, because the executive director and the founder of Pacific Island Food Revolution, who is Robert Oliver, of course, a name that we all know here in Fiji, and a celebrated international chef and award-winning author, was on MasterChef New Zealand as a host or as a judge. And that's where he got the idea from. He realized the power of television. We're in homes. People are entertained by competition, by seeing people cooking and fighting for a prize. And so he decided to use that concept of media and television to not only provide entertainment, but really educate the Pacific, the people in the region, about why it's important to eat from our own backyard or from purchase foods from local markets or from local farmers. So we do that through television. We also do that through radio programs. We've got a couple of radio programs in Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, and Vanuatu that similar version to the TV, but created for radio, where we really engage the listeners. The beauty about it, it's done in local languages. Whereas for television, it's in English. The radio programs are in Fijian, Bislama, Tongan, and Samoan. And we really engage the public, whether they're from urban centers or rural areas, villages, or even in maritime spaces. They get to ring in and share their recipes, and of course we give them a prize, something to work towards, which is why the engagement is always so high.
So the show itself is it's a competition, elimination style competition, where you have teams from around the Pacific, and after every round somebody is eliminated.
Someone goes home.
Yeah. And the basis of the competition or the cooking itself is local Pacific cuisine, because Robert Oliver has always been a Pacific cuisine champion, right? So before we go to our break, let's we have a short video to play, which basically summarizes what Pacific Island Food Revolution, the TV show, is. So take a look at that.
Last year saw the beginning of a revolution in the Pacific. A revolution that set new standards and changed lives forever.
It's not going to stop here. This will take us to the world.
And this year, it's going to get even bigger.
It would be an honor to win this.
We're practicing what we preach about eating healthier.
As 12 new teams compete to represent their home nations.
I have the passion for cooking. This is heaven here in Tonga.
They're ready to give it their all.
It's hot. So stop moving the stuff.
Sorry. Man, oh man.
And wow our renowned judges.
I think they have done a fantastic job.
I'd like to see nurturing and fulfilling Tongan food.
To help our people make affordable, healthy meals for their families.
Your participation is going to inspire.
This year, our cooks are more determined than ever to take the revolution to the world.
You ready?
Yes.
Season 2 of the Pacific Island Food Revolution starts now.
Good evening and welcome. We're joined this evening by Wame Valentine from Pacific Island Food Revolution. So in the earlier segment, before we went to break, you mentioned a bit about the NCD issue that exists in the Pacific. And you look at this program, it's called a revolution, right? And that's an interesting choice of word. So for the people in your team, especially at the helm, Robert Oliver, do you think that looking at the situation, a revolution is what's really needed for our eating habits in Fiji or in the Pacific?
Oh, we need a change. We need a solution. Something needs to be done. When you look at the numbers, the official numbers here in Fiji, for instance, 3 Fijians every day are amputated due to diabetes. It's a very sad number. And that's just diabetes. We're not factoring in other NCDs. Right. Across the Pacific, official data from the World Health Organization shows that 75% of deaths in the Pacific are NCD related. Something needs to be done. And of course, we're very grateful to the partners on the ground, the different organizations and government who's been pushing for folks to relook at what they put on their plate and what they put in their mouths, particularly the food that they eat. But we need a different push, and I think the push we're working towards here is a complete change in lifestyle, a change of behavior. We really can't convince people to change their eating habits when they don't have a good view or perception of their own food. If someone prefers to get fast food that's foreign and processed as opposed to creating something from the local market, then that's something that we need to address. If our kids would prefer to eat instant processed noodles as opposed to a healthier alternative, that's something we need to address. It was a sad sight just a couple of weeks ago. I was driving by and I saw this lovely group of people who were selling boo, coconut juice, by the side of the road, which is nice. But they were sitting there selling coconut juice while drinking a sugary drink.
Right.
And it's sad, one might chuckle when you look at that, but it comes back to our perception that maybe this is not good enough, or maybe we probably have a very dim view of it. Where the truth is, our own food, the food from our local markets, from our backyards, they are superfoods. They are full of nutritious, they're nutrient dense and great for your health and great for your well-being. So yes, we need a food revolution. We need to change the perception of the community, of the region, and take it back to our local indigenous healthy food that has sustained us for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's what we're working towards. And we're very grateful indeed to the partners, particularly to our funders, and also to the governments in Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, and Vanuatu. The Honourable Minister for Health and Medical Services, Dr. Wame and his team have just been incredible. And we're very excited about continuing this moving forward.
Doing it through a television show or through media such as television and radio, this is a new approach, right? So how do you know that these methods work?
It's never been done before. It's a very different, innovative approach to working towards a development outcome, at least. So it's never been tested before. It's never been done before. And when we started in 2018, we thought, well, let's put the product out there. Let's put the TV show across the Pacific. And of course, it airs here on FBC TV. And it also airs across 20 different television networks in the Pacific, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, across Southeast Asia, and soon to be in North America. But as you said, it's never been done before. How do you know that this works? Earlier this year, we had commissioned Busara Center for Behavioral Economics. That's an independent body that really measures impact, development impact, particularly through the lens of entertainment. And they've done a survey in Fiji, in Samoa, in Tonga, and in Vanuatu. And at the end of their survey, they released a report, which is called the Impact Assessment Report. Your viewers would be able to view it on the website, which is pacificislandfoodrevolution.com. The Impact Assessment Report really shows whether or not this model works. And I'm happy to share some of the data with you, if you'd permit. The report looked at several factors. One thing is, first of all, whether or not people are watching the show. Are they interested? Are they intrigued or entertained by the program? And what the Impact Assessment Report shows is that the Pacific Island Food Revolution has incredibly engaging numbers as far as individuals who watch our program or who engage with us, not only through television, but through radio and digital media, which includes social media and our website. So in Fiji, during their survey, they found that 63% of people in Fiji watch us or follow us, Pacific Island Food Revolution. 85% in Tonga, 67% in Samoa, and 43% in Vanuatu. Incredible numbers.
Right.
When you have a television program, the only thing you want is to get high ratings.
Right.
And this is good, but this is not what we're after. What we're really after is whether or not people are changing their eating habits. Are they making positive changes, putting aside processed foreign food in favor of local healthy options? And the overwhelming response is yes, people certainly are. In Fiji, for instance, 33% of respondents in this country have made positive changes in their diet within the last year, in 2020, after engaging with Pacific Island Food Revolution. 33% is massive. Right. In Samoa, it's 147%. Tonga went up to 262%. Of people who are engaging with Pacific Island Food Revolution have made positive changes in their diet. And this is wonderful news. Generally, across the board, on average, in the four Pacific Island countries, 42% of people have reported positive changes in their eating habits. Now, this is brilliant, because now what this means in the long term is that if this continues for the next couple of years, at least a decade, if we're able to keep these numbers and continue to shift perceptions towards local food, the outcome would be good. We certainly hope to, over time, flatten the curve, if you would, of the NCD rates in Fiji and the Pacific.
That's interesting. So we'll go to a short break, and when we come back, we'll carry on the discussion. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. We're discussing Pacific Island Food Revolution. Wame, before we went to the break, you spoke about how the show has aired in a number of Pacific Island countries, and the response that you've gotten so far is great. The engagement is there. And I can personally attest to that, having seen a few episodes myself. The show is absolutely addictive, and it's really entertaining to watch. What does that viewership mean for your program?
Right. Well, the impact numbers, in my view, my specialty is communications. I particularly work around the field of behavior change communications. And for a program that has been around for the short period of time that we have been, essentially 2019, 2020, for you to be able to achieve 42% impact across 4 Pacific Island countries, in my personal opinion, is unheard of. Usually people's behavior, to change it takes time. Right. People are complicated, so you need to work at it. It takes a long time to change perceptions and behavior. The fact that we've achieved that is, in my view, quite massive. We certainly want to continue that for at least 8 to 10 years for we to see big impact in the community. Now, what would that mean if we are able to achieve that? If 42% of individuals made a positive change, if we could only keep 10%, not the full 42, every year for the next 8 to 10 years, we'd be able to save 165,000 or impact 165,000 lives in the Pacific. Just 10%, trying to impact their lives for the better. These are people who would benefit tremendously if they would make healthy food choices. And that's just in lives. The economic toil of NCDs in the Pacific is quite significant. So we would save also millions and millions of dollars, about 40 million US over a 10-year period, if we still maintain just 10% of that impact. So, this is huge, this is massive. This is groundbreaking for me personally, and this is something I and the team, we certainly want to continue moving forward. The beauty of Pacific Island Food Revolution is not just the benefit or the approach we use using media to try to highlight and put the spotlight on local food. The beauty of it is also, it sort of ticks a lot of boxes. When you encourage people to buy from local markets, what you're essentially doing is that instead of spending your money on products that's been imported, you are buying from local farmers, men and women who have families to feed, children to look after. You're putting money in their pocket, you're putting money in the local economy. There's been a report done, I'm fairly sure, from UN Women on the women participation, particularly in the agricultural spaces, in agricultural sector, predominantly in markets, particularly here in Suva. I can speak for someone who lives here in Suva. You'll probably notice most of them are women. Right. So as far as gender empowerment, women empowerment and gender equality goes, local food, buying local food ticks that boxes as well. So it ticks a lot of boxes, but from sort of a overview, from a different look, on a personal note, what I appreciate about Pacific Island Food Revolution is there's rarely a TV program that we get to see on our television screens that display us, Fijians, or Melanesians, or Pacifica, in a beautiful way and done in a manner that is top class. Our program is not only viewed across the Pacific, but people watch it in Australia on SBS Food. They watch it out there on New Zealand on Maori TV and TVNZ. They see us on Southeast Asia, all across Southeast Asia, in the United Kingdom, and very soon in the United States. And that's wonderful for people outside of the Pacific, because now that the borders are open, certainly here in Fiji, they would look at Fiji then more than just nice white sandy beaches. They could come here and hopefully experience the food culture. you know, and we get to promote food tourism in that sense. Instead of just opening a menu up at their hotel, they could come out into the different markets and look at what's...
As I understand it, the part of the challenge in the show is to use local ingredients to present, I guess, create a gourmet style, an elevated dish, right? And that's not something that you see a lot of happening.
No. There are episodes where, you know, the challenges that contestants have is they have to create something that's geared towards sort of like a tourism market. But there's most of the episodes are also, they get recipes that you and I and your viewers could cook at home.
Right.
You know, one thing we've also found from the survey is most people are daunted at the prospect of cooking. You know,
right.
Some of them like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Or some people have a very busy schedule. You won't be able to whip up something that's quick. What people could find through our television program, and they could also find on our website, pacificislandfoodrevolution.com, is that we've got recipes that are really simple and easy to do. You know, these are ingredients from the market that you could get locally, and that if I could cook it, you could cook it too. It's fairly simple. It's something for everybody there.
So when it comes to tackling NCDs, we understand that your nutrition and the quality of the food that you eat does make a very heavy impact on, you know, whether or not or your chances of developing an NCD. Are we saying that, I mean, which aspect of NCDs does PIFA aim to look at?
Right.
Because, you know, food or nutrition it's not the only aspect of NCDs, right?
Quite right. And I mean, I'm not a nutritionist. I will only quote what the experts have said. But they've said, particularly pertaining to NCDs, there's several factors. One of it, of course, is smoking, consumption of alcohol, or the overconsumption of alcohol, physical activity, or the lack thereof. But a big component of it is diet. You know, and that's something that we just look at, because for us, food or nutrition tackles more than one issue. It's not only an NCD issue. You know, you look at food sovereignty, food security, even beyond NCDs, communicable diseases like COVID-19. We've had the Honorable Minister for Health here in Fiji, Dr. Wame, you know, had mentioned about this in our statement that was released online, about how if you continue to eat local food, you know, you wouldn't have NCDs. And those who get severely ill from COVID, a majority of them, they found that have some underlying health condition.
Right.
You know, so, you know, even when it comes to COVID, NCDs, tackling NCDs does matter, because it does tick a lot of boxes. So in that sense, you know, it's quite full on.
So we'll go to another break and we'll carry on that discussion specifically linked to underlying health conditions and how nutrition is linked to it. So we'll come back after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the show. We're taking a look at Pacific Island Food Revolution, a brand new and innovative program that focuses on local healthy eating. Let's talk about some communicable diseases and the current situation that exists in the Pacific. We all know that because of COVID-19, a lot of people in the recent months have been going back to herbal medication because there's been a lot of talking about the fact that underlying health conditions will affect your chances of developing severe COVID-19 symptoms. And there has been a lot of focus on, going back to traditional food and eating healthy, and also because of the economic situation, engaging as well with local farmers. So the timing of this show is, I guess, apt. You're going into the third season?
We are, next year. Fingers crossed.
Right.
Of course, COVID has sort of thrown a spanner in the works. Travel and movement is slightly bit of a challenge now as it was a year or two ago. But just briefly on COVID, you mentioned earlier, and herbal medicine. We don't necessarily push herbal medicine. We are of the opinion, Pacific Island Food Revolution, particularly pertaining to COVID-19, that you follow the guidelines of the government. And certainly here in Fiji, what we have pushed is, vaccination. And we believe that people should be vaccinated, and I'm very grateful indeed to the government and you know, the governments also of Australia and New Zealand who've been able to provide that, because I'm fully vaccinated myself. But what we also push is, you know, we encourage people to, in the process, particularly now more than ever, it's important to support the local economy, particularly the agricultural sector. Now we've realized how really important it is, you know, particularly in this pandemic. And it's been wonderful. You know, we get a lot of feedback, for a lot of responses from the community, particularly those who are in the agricultural sector, saying, you know, we're just so happy to see people purchasing from us, you know, and cooking. And you see a lot of videos coming out, particularly during the lockdown period here in Fiji, at least, of people showing videos of cooking meals at home, which is wonderful. And I certainly hope, you know, now that, you know, the vaccinated numbers are high and the borders are beginning to open, that will still continue the coming months and years. But yes, the NCD numbers are quite, you know, they're disturbing. They're some of the highest in the world. Off the top of my head, I can't recall which report specifically, but it was from WHO, and they listed the top 10 most obese countries per capita. 7 of them are from the Pacific. You know, in the world, 7 are from the Pacific. And, you know, we really need to start doing something. Something that the late Dr. Isimeli Tukana, the former NCD advisor to the Fijian government, has always said, he said to me, is, you know, we tend to be, as people, reactive. When something happens, then we run to the hospital, we're going to see a doctor. You know, we should be able to be proactive. Make sure that we don't get diabetes in the first place by taking steps, the appropriate steps now. And, you know, I encourage your viewers to, of course, speak to their doctors, speak to their nutritionist, but also to look at our website, to look at different Fijian recipes, or even recipes from other countries that you could make at home that are local and also and are healthy. Those are taking proactive steps towards making sure you are healthy and live a life of wellness. Of course, compounded with, you know, physical activity, you know, stop smoking, alcohol consumption, of course, been brought to a minimum. But yeah, it's you know, it's good to take a proactive step, a proactive approach now, because you know, we don't want to be part of the statistics.
Right. As you mentioned earlier, one of the underlying themes of the show is to, I guess, impact local food culture. Would you like to comment on the current culture that exists in Fiji and the Pacific when it comes to food?
Yeah, I can certainly speak on Fiji. You know, a couple of years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, there's virtually no place you could find in Suva that served you good, delicious, healthy Fijian food. Of course, you know, we're lucky that there are lovely restaurants that serve Chinese meals and European dishes, or Italian and French dishes, and Indian dishes as well. But there was no place that you could find Fijian food done well and done healthy, and you'd enjoy, and even those who are not Fijians outside of this country would come in and enjoy as well. Now, in the last 2 years, 3 years, you just see this explosion of restaurants that either exclusively serve Fijian food or also include Fijian food in their menu, which is wonderful, here in Suva at least, and I live in Suva, so I can only speak for Suva. But I think it's testament to the fact that the members of the public are now beginning to go back and appreciate really their culture, who we are as a people, our identity, by choosing local food. And really it's better when you look at the processed fast food options, when you look at instant noodles, you know, you'd rather choose your own local healthy meal because, you know, as mentioned earlier, it ticks a lot of boxes, not just your health, but so many other things. So it's just wonderful now that you'll be able to, if, for instance, for me today, I've got a couple of family waiting out in the wings. We're going to go out and have a meal after this. You have that option of going, right, we've got 2 or 3 or 4 restaurants that we could go to that we know would be served lovely fish with ota, nama, kokonda and roro, and they've got, you know, kumala or tapioca options there as well, and I think that's wonderful. And even when it comes to refreshments, you know, it's not sugary drinks. They'll give you kumquat juice or ronimoli. They've got thomboi tea or lemongrass tea, and I think that's wonderful. It's about time.
We have more and more international franchises, fast food franchises operating and opening up their doors in Fiji, which I guess in some ways is great, but it does affect local food culture, because if you're able to, I guess, access that fast food, and when we say fast food, you can grab it fast and eat it fast. It's every aspect of that food is made for you to just consume it quickly. How do we get people to move away from that sort of food?
Again, it's really changing perception, but we also have to understand that sometimes people say they just want something quick.
Right.
We are a behavior change communication program. That's what we do. But we're beginning to branch out, and we realize that we need to start working with partners on the ground on creating food products, meal kits that are local, that are healthy, that you could get from your local supermarket, local store, and take it home and pop it in the microwave or heat it back up. So that would probably be an answer to sort of like an instant meal, or fast food or fast meal. We're at the early stages at the moment. We are working with, in Samoa, with our partners in Samoa for that. We certainly hope we can kickstart it in Fiji in the next couple of months. But yeah, that's a valid point. But what I tend to do for the most part, and sometimes I'm not successful at it, is I gently plan my meal for the week.
Right.
And I cook things and I put them in the fridge. Then I would just heat them if I'm running late or if I need a quick meal. And so there's options that people could look into.
So it's interesting you mentioned partnerships. When we come back from our next break, we'll take a short break, and we'll talk about some of these partnerships that you have created through this program and how they're helping you achieve your targets. So stay with us. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to the show. We're taking a look at Pacific Island Food Revolution. You mentioned earlier on in the show that making this possible has been, an effort by various stakeholders and partners. You mentioned that you've received a lot of support from the Ministry of Health, as well as Australia and New Zealand governments and governments around the Pacific as well. So talk to us about some of those partnerships.
Vinaka, this is a mammoth of a task. We can't do this alone. And we require the community to come together and hold hands, because this will affect us all, all of us. And one thing we've been deeply appreciative of, and we understand, is the important role of partnerships. We're grateful for the support of the governments of Australia and New Zealand for the first 3 years during our pilot phase. We're also grateful for the support of the governments of Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, and Vanuatu. We work very closely with the Ministries of Health, especially in these 4 countries. We work very closely with the Honourable Prime Minister in Samoa, Fiame Naomi Matafa, and her incredible team, and we're appreciative of that. But we also work with different organizations and groups on the ground, on the community. We want to go straight down to the community. Currently here in Fiji, we are working with an organization called NetGo Fiji, which is a netball organization that promotes physical activity and netball across the country. What we've done is we've teamed up with them. In fact, we are going down to Lautoka next week. And so for individuals who are interested, who might be keen on the details, I invite you to check our Facebook page, Pacific Island Food Revolution. And what happens in these events, they will do their bit on promoting physical activity, and then we will do cooking demonstrations. Because we feel like it's important to go hand in hand. It's great that you're working out, but you need to eat well as well. There's no point working out and then you're eating noodles on the side, or you're plastering up white bread with butter. Right. So we've got a little cooking demonstration and providing recipes to the participants who get to take that home and get to taste and join us cooking as well. And that's how we engage the community. The beauty of that, of course, is you get to listen to their questions. They've got some questions, they've got some ideas. We want to replace this. Can we replace it with something else? And we get to talk to them face to face. We're also grateful for a partnership that we've done with UNICEF Pacific. We've created products to target children. When you look at marketing, particularly of processed food, they're very geared towards kids. And they're done in a way that's enticing kids. And so we want to move in that space as well to get children on board to start eating healthy. UNICEF Pacific's ambassador is Peter Tautafunua from Tonga. Many of us would remember him as the bloke who was walking in the Olympics shirtless, all oiled up with the Tongan flag. He's a lovely chap. But he, as well as the host of PIFA and the founder, Robert Oliver, would be creating dishes like lunches for kids with children present. We call this program Specific Kids Food Revolution, which I think is airing also on FBC TV and across the Pacific as well. So that's a partnership we are proud of with UNICEF Pacific, and we are very excited to be continuing working with them moving forward. We also partner with Sanma Food Revolution. This is in Vanuatu. The beautiful thing about this partnership is these are projects that come out of Pacific Island Food Revolution. The individual who's leading that particular project was a contestant on season 2 of PIFA. And so they've got their own, what they've called Sanma. Sanma is an area in Vanuatu, Sanma Food Revolution, where they go to different communities, about 10 or 12 different communities, and really promoting Ni Vanuatu food and Ni Vanuatu culture. And that's been lovely. They've just had their first event a week ago, which was quite a success, and they've got a couple more lined up in the coming weeks. So we have different partners on the ground in Tonga as well. We're working with schools in Tonga. We're working in Samoa as well, hoping to put together this meal kit I mentioned earlier on that people could buy from different shops and supermarkets. And that's important. You know, we cannot do this alone. Partnerships is key. And of course, our doors are open to interested parties out there and organizations who want to work with us to champion local food and good nutritious meals.
So as we're approaching the end of our show, let's talk about the show itself. So as I understand from the first 2 seasons have aired, I've seen that the contestants are usually members from each, I guess, different Pacific Island countries who represent their own specific cuisine styles. Is that something that we can look forward to in the further seasons as well? I know that the season 3 hasn't aired, but since we have you here, I know that you might not feel comfortable. But I will ask anyways.
You're trying to
as
get
a
some
first exclusive.
Right.
So talk to us about season 3. What can we expect?
Well, you know, I'm in the dark, honestly speaking, as much as you are, because our producers were tight-lipped. We didn't even know who the winners were for season 2. In fact, I've got a funny story. What they did was, you know, it came down to 2 particular winners, and I'm not going to say who. If you haven't watched it, you could get on our website on Pacific Island Food Revolution, and you could watch it there, the full season. And they both crowned them both winners. And they told them only one person will be the winner, which will be revealed when it comes on television. So, you know, all the contestants, they weren't even aware up until it came out on TV. So they're quite tight-lipped on it. What I do know is it's going to be a fairly different format from the first 2 seasons, mainly due to COVID. We won't be necessarily filming in 4 countries. We're hoping to film in its entirety in Fiji. We are talking to Investment Fiji and Film Fiji, and we're hoping to get this started in the 1st or 2nd quarter of next year. We will be bringing in contestants who represent the Pacific, and they will all probably be filming here in Fiji. I'm fairly certain that may happen. As far as the format goes, it will still be somewhat similar, but that's all I could give at this point in time. I will say it's going to be exciting. It's really going to be going to be bigger and better.
That sounds very interesting. At the moment, for someone who hasn't caught up with season 1 and 2, that's available on your website?
It is in its entirety. You could go on to pacificislandfoodrevolution.com, and there's a section there. I think there's a Food Warriors tab, as we call it, and you could sign up and you could watch the episodes there online on your laptop or on your phone. You have to sign up though, and this is only available to people who live in the Pacific. Outside of the Pacific, you can't access it.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Unfortunately, we've come to the end. We look forward. I'm eagerly awaiting for season 3, and all the best. We hope to have further seasons.
Maybe you could be a contestant.
I would love to be a contestant. I'm a pretty good. But thank you, Wame, for joining us.
My pleasure. No,
And that's all we have for you on the show tonight. Stay safe and have a good evening.